Welcome learners. It's week 4, lecture 18, and in this week we are going to cover the idea of gender in the context of modern Indian theatre, the changing scenario of modern Indian theatre. So, in this particular lecture, we are going to talk about modern Indian theatre in the context of selected plays. Let us move ahead. This particular lecture covers the following topics, including the conception of modernity in Indian theatre, what are the primary features of modern Indian theatre, how it is different from the traditional, the folk and the Sanskrit theatre, and afterwards we will move towards the analysis of one of the plays by Girish Karnad. Modern Indian theatre is more realistic and reformist rather than being concerned for the aesthetics in theatre. Unlike the traditional Indian theatre, in the modern Indian theatre, we see that it appeals to the common masses and it deals with the realistic issues and challenges and the aspiration faced by the common people. You can see in the slides where the modern Indian theatre has been explained in the sense that it is more realistic and reformist, representing the common masses, their challenges and aspirations rather than merely entertaining the elites. Earlier in theatre, it was seen that especially the elite theatre, the Sanskrit theatre was an elite theatre and it did not cater the need of the common masses. Whereas in the modern Indian theatre, it initially appealed to the upper classes and the middle class people and gradually adapted the needs of the issues of the common people as well. That's why it became popular. In modern Indian theatre, we see there is the impact of colonial rule. In fact, we can say that due to the influence of British theatre and with the beginning of colonial rule in India, when India came in contact with the West and West came in contact with East, the encounter brought various changes at the level of method, structure, theme when it comes to modern Indian theatre. So, there was an impact of colonial rule which is clearly visible. In fact, the influence of English drama and the establishment of proscenium arch theatre in the late 19th century in the big cities like Calcutta, Bombay also shaped the modern Indian theatre. Initially, there was an influence of proscenium art theatre and various theatre houses were established. Later on, various reformists realized that the Indian traditional theatre should be revived and they started performing, directing the plays in various spaces, not in the proscenium but sometimes in courtyards or in open available spaces, which is making it more native to the land. We also see in modern Indian theatre the impact of nationalist freedom movements that helped. We also see the impact of nationalist freedom movements which mobilized people, and theatre became a medium, a tool to mobilize people, to aware people during the national freedom movements. In the modern Indian theatre, when we talk about the revival of traditional way of presenting play, traditional methods and adapting the Sanskrit and folk style of drama, we see that various translations also took place. Apart from new plays which were written by some renowned dramatists like Girish Karnad, Badal Sarkar, Mohan Rakesh, Ratan Thiam, and many such prominent figures appeared who combined the folk classical elements in the modern drama. There was various translations as well, in which we see that many Sanskrit plays were translated into English and several English plays were translated into Hindi and other Indian languages. For example, Shakespearean plays were very popular during colonial period in India and even afterwards, and many of the Shakespearean plays, especially tragedies and some popular romantic comedies, were adapted and translated in India. Along with that, we also see Sanskrit plays being discovered and translated by Western scholars. For example, William Jones' translation of Kalidas Abhigyan Shakuntalam was available in 1789, where he translated this significant Sanskrit play into English, and it became globally popular. Moving ahead, so we see various experiments have been done when it comes to the modern Indian theatre. The modernity in Indian theatre not only includes the Western impact, the influence, the methodology used by theatre practitioners of the West, but also performances, traditional, the blending of folk and traditional elements in modern Indian drama. So, one of the important names that come here is of Badal Sarkar. He did various experiments. His theatre was known as Third Theatre, that produced plays not in the proscenium or that produced plays not in an auditorium or a Western theatre hall, but in the open and found spaces, at the public places, in the middle of the audience, on the street, without using artificial light, sets and costumes. So, Badal Sarkar made an experiment which was successful, and various plays were not only written by him but directed by him, which were produced for the audience, that did not call the audience at a certain place, but it took theatre itself in the middle of the audience to perform in the open area on the street, and making theatre more impactful and native and traditional. Along with Badal Sarkar, another name that comes is of K.N. Panikkar and Ratan Thiam, who have contributed immensely to revive traditional Indian theatre by blending folk elements in the modern theatrical adaptations and performances. So, modern Indian theatre combines primarily the elements of folk, Sanskrit and Western theatre as well. So, there is a blend of mythologies and history in modern drama. Some very significant modern theatre practitioners are Girish Karnad, Mohan Rakesh, Habib Tanveer, Tripurari Sharma, Vijay Tendulkar, and many other and many other dramatists have contributed to it. One of the examples of this blend that we are talking about could be a play written by Poili Sen Gupta. She is a modern Indian playwright. She wrote a play titled Thus Spake Shupnakha, So Said Shakuni. It's a popular Indian English play in which she took up the mythological characters of Shakuni and Shupnakha and created a setting according to the Western, and she created a setup of Western performance where we see that this play is influenced by Bertolt Brecht's theatre style character, the characters there are two characters, men and woman. When they get into convert themselves to another character as Shakuni and Shupnakha, they are not going at the back to change the guise. They do it in front of the audience on stage in the light and get into the character and start performing, breaking the illusion of watching a performance and taking it as a reality. So, the Brechtian style is adapted, but at the same time it is set in the Indian epic. The Brechtian style is adapted, but it is set in Indian context where we see the great epics Ramayana and Mahabharata are in the context where the two characters who are represented as evil characters are again presented in a different light. And here in this play, Thus Spake Shupnakha, So Said Shakuni, they get a voice to tell their own story, to retell their own story in a different way. And that makes them not a devil or black and white character, but human being who also suffered and struggled at the same time. Moving ahead, we see that one of the scholars, Indian scholars, Rakesh Solomon, classifies modern Indian theatre broadly into three phases: the Orientalist phase, the high nationalist phase, and the post-colonial phase, where we see a gradual change taking place in the understanding of Indian ethos and sensibility as done by Indian dramatists and practitioners. Initially, there was an imitation of the Western style, but gradually the native, the local, the folk elements were blended that made modern Indian theatre in itself a strong area, a strong discipline to be explored. Primarily, we see that in modern Indian theatre, when we read the plays, primarily when we see the modern Indian drama, when we read them, we see that it deals with the familial issues, it talks about the institute of marriage, interrogates the hierarchies existing not only in the public spaces but also at the level of the family in the private spaces, and interrogates and question these hierarchies from various perspectives including gender. So, we see that apart from the nationalist impact, there was also a questioning of Indian social structure, the structure of family, the institution of marriage, the relationships, the hierarchies are being the subject of modern Indian drama. Modern Indian theatre became more professional and trainings were given when the proper professional trainings were given when National School of Drama, also known as NSD in New Delhi, was established, and National School of Drama started training actors, directors, designers in modern techniques of theatre, at the same time making them learn the traditional Indian theatre. At the same time making them learn the elements of traditional Indian drama. Moving ahead with this brief background of modern Indian theatre, we come to the representation of gender. Primarily, first we will talk about the representation of women in modern Indian drama in the context of Karnad's play Hayavadana. So, when we talk about how women were represented in modern Indian drama, especially in 19th and till the middle of 20th century, we find one of the scholar Nandi Bhatia stating that they were primarily represented in three ways. Women were primarily represented in three ways: as Maya or Mata or a victim. So, these were the traditional roles thrust on women by men's world, where they were not shown, they were not represented as a fully grown human being having a thinking mind and having her own desire. Rather, they were presented into stereotypical manner, either as Maya, a seductress, a temptress, or a figure of a mother to be respected and to be put on a high pedestal, or a vulnerable figure, a suffering woman, a victim. This has been questioned by feminist scholar why women were incomplete in these portrayal, why they are not presented as they are, but as men's gaze wants to see them. Here, another important scholar and writer, Tutan Mukherjee, mentioned that why women are, she talks about why women are lacking in the field of writing plays, why there is dearth of plays written by women. The primary causes she is stressing out, where she mentioned within quote, the denial of education to women, the male exclusivity in the print culture, the tendency to vulgarize and devalue oral culture, the separation of the private and the public space have all served to confine women to certain genres and restrict or erase their presence in others. So, primarily we see that the denial of education, male dominance in the print culture, and the tendency to devalue women's presence in oral culture and their separation from the public spaces, confinement to the private spaces are the causes behind women, found less in number in the field of playwriting. Now the things are changing and we have number of female playwrights as well who are very much active in the field of writing. So, what do we see primarily and how these female characters who were stereotypically presented are gradually changing in the modern Indian drama, how they figured in a different way what is the change that we see in their representation in the modern Indian drama. So, we see that the female characters in modern plays are able to raise question, they have voice, they raise question, they interrogate, they are primarily, these women, these female characters are primarily looking for their own identity, seeking for self-identity and self-respect. They make their own choices, they take decision, and they take the responsibility of the mistake that they do. So, unlike the previous representation of women in drama, we see there is a change in modern Indian drama, how women are represented, who are able to speak out and are able to express their emotions, their desires and what they want, which is significant change that we see in modern Indian theatre. Now we come to the analysis part, where we are going to discuss in particular Girish Karnad's play Hayavadana, and we will explore how gender representation take place in this particular play by one of the leading dramatists in India, Girish Karnad. Girish Karnad's play Hayavadana is a modern play with contemporary issues, but it employs traditional theatre techniques. It employs traditional and folk theatre techniques. So, the elements of folk traditions are incorporated to engage the audience. For example, mask, doll, painting, sword and several other paraphernalia are used to engage the audience and blend folk elements in the modern play called Hayavadana by Girish Karnad. And it's a play within a play, where we see the narrator, who is known as Bhagavat, comes on stage and introduces the characters of the play to the audience. A ritual that happens on a puja is offered to the Lord Ganesha for the successful completion of the play, but then Bhagavat points out the irony that Ganesha himself is incomplete. Bhagavat, the narrator, stated, in quote, "An elephant's head on a human body, a broken tusk and a cracked belly. Whichever way you look at him, he seems the embodiment of imperfection and of incompleteness." So, this play primarily addresses the idea of self-identity, the incompleteness, the search for perfection and not finding it, and how to interpret one's own desires, emotions, and the struggle between oneself and the society are being reflected in this play. These are the themes which are explored in Girish Karnad's play Hayavadana. Here we see Bhagavat introducing the two heroes of the play, Devdutt, who is unrivaled in intelligence, he is known for his intelligence, and Kapila, who is to the king's armory as an excel to the chariot's wheel, who is known for his physical strength. So, Devdutt is known for his intelligence, whereas his friend Kapila is known for his strength. Here a situation occurs where we see Devdutt and Kapila both fell in love with Padmini, and Devdutt gets married to Padmini, and the three of them, Devdutt, Kapila and Padmini, remained a friend. And in one of the incident where we see there is a plan to travel together to Ujjain, and they started traveling. On the way to Ujjain, both offer their heads to goddess Kali in the situation of a dispute, where goddess Kali resurrects both, but there is an issue, their heads have been exchanged, as she asked Padmini to take the decision and take up the heads and again join it and they will become alive. But by mistake, in excitement, she exchanged the heads. So, mistakenly, Padmini has exchanged the heads who has been given agency by goddess Kali herself. Padmini stated, "The head always wins, doesn't it?" And she accompanied Devdutt. Padmini gives the chance and exercise her free will and ended up with chaos in hers as well as Devdutt's and Kapila's lives, because none of them, neither Padmini nor Devdutt and nor Kapila, was happy in their life. At the end, Kapila and Devdutt kill each other and Padmini pays the price for exercising her will by performing sati. So briefly, this was the plot of Girish Karnad's Hayavadana, where we see a woman, a female character, Padmini, she is the leading figure in the play, is being able to share her desires, and we don't find her a passive character, rather she is an active, voiced character where she is able to express her desires, her choices, her love for her husband, and she is the one who has the agency and she is the one who decides. But at the same time, we also see Padmini suffering as the wife of Devdutt, where the jealousy comes in him, seeing her being nice to Kapila, giving him compliment for his physical strength, made Devdutt upset, and he started hating Kapila and Padmini. And in the situation of dispute, he sacrificed his head in front of goddess Kali. So we see that none of these characters, when we see Padmini or Kapila or Devdutt, are being complete in themselves or completely happy. Padmini is seeking for her own identity. She is also seeking for happiness in life, which she ultimately could not get, and sacrifice her life. She became Sati. Similarly, we do not find Kapila and Devdutt being happy in their life. They fell in love with the same woman and it created a conflict. Here also the patriarchal structure has been exposed that does not allow women to make her choices and express her desire, where man is able to do so. But we see Girish Karnad presenting Padmini as an empowered character in the sense that she expresses her desires and emotions and she makes her choices based on the basis of intelligence, and she chose Devdutt as her husband. She is not completely emancipated. She is not completely independent as a character. There are criticism of the play at the same time, but we need to see that unlike the traditional stereotypical figure that we see of women in the plays, here in Girish Karnad's play, which is a modern drama, a change has been visible where the female character is voiced, she talks, she makes her own choices, she decides for herself and she expresses her desires and she is able to take her own decision. But these things are not without suffering and there is no perfection in their life. The incompleteness is shown as one of the major themes that if God is incomplete, these human who are seeking for it may not find it. So with these words, I end up here, and in the coming lecture we will talk about in greater detail about the modern Indian plays by analyzing other plays and looking into the gender dimension of it. Thank you so much.